Yeah, the crawler wild's always bringing me home. Crawler wild's always bringing me home. Crawler wild's always bringing me home.
Okay. Hello, wild ones, and I am so excited. Today we have Maria Souza with Women in Mythology, and you're actually my very first podcast guest. So, welcome. I'm so excited to be able to chat with you. Thanks for making time for me today.
Thank you so much, Brianna, for the invitation. I'm very honored, and I hope this podcast journey goes amazingly well for you.
Thank you so much. Yes. So, we met because of your amazing course, The Wolves Tribe. So I thought it would just be nice to kind of start off with that and to give a little background on yourself and some of your work and how you got here.
Of course, my pleasure. So, I'm a comparative mythologist. I work with Applied Mythology, which is basically using stories, myths, folk tales into our contemporary life as a way of guiding ourselves. How do I arrived in this work? I began working with indigenous people in the Brazilian Amazon. I am from Brazil. And while I was working there, I am a historian, and I began to see myth as something that was alive. They use myth in indigenous tribes as a way of problematizing their behavior, as a way of transmitting knowledge forward. And I started to see it as alive, as these stories, this body of work is actually very instrumental for people. And I started questioning my own stories, the own stories that I carried. And I went to do my master's and continue studying to the moment that I believe slowly, I kind of took authority of my own work, found my passion, found the stories that I like to work with. When you work with mythology, as a comparative mythologist, there are so many ways that this can go about. There are so many types of stories that you can dedicate yourself to. And I found my greatest passion in stories for women, stories that give us tools, stories that inspire, that encourage, that send messages that perhaps our modern day world is lacking and young girls
Right.
are not receiving.
Yes, yes. I love that. And I think that's what drew me to you initially because what you offer is so unique and that I feel like is kind of hard to find in this world now, right? Is kind of relating back to mythology and how we can use that in our modern lives now. Um, and how would you say specifically that you got into the wild woman? So, all the things that go into into that. So,
To be honest, it wasn't the wild woman archetype that attracted me in the first place, but it was these myths that showcased a woman, a heroine. That for me was very attractive. And actually, the book Women Who Run with the Wolves appeared in my life early on, and I never had the time, the patience to go in deep when I was an adolescent and things like that. But then later, while I was doing my master's, I was studying under great mythologist Martin Shaw, who has shaped my work very deeply. Like still today, he is the source for
yes.
me. He is someone who shaped my way of dealing with stories, of working with a group as well, how I see symbols and all of it. But the stories he carries and the stories he tells has a lot to do with the natural world and with men, which are
Mhm.
fine and honorable. But it wasn't what clicked for me. So I
Right.
started while I was working under, like studying with him, I started looking for the stories that actually held just deeper meaning for me. And it was actually through his guidance that I went through Women Who Run with the Wolves, that I kind of explored more deeply the book. And then I think got in touch with the idea of the wild woman archetype. But it was really through the heroine, searching for stories rather than searching for wild women that I came in
Yeah.
contact with her.
I love that because it's almost like she called to you, right? So when you were ready to kind of dive deeper into her, that's when all the stories aligned. And I think that's what it's interesting about the Wild Woman is one of the things that you said is she's like a prism, right? So she kind of falls under all of these different uh I don't know if it's archetypes in between there, but like she's a witch, right? Like could she be say that she's a witch? She's a lot of different manifestations, but I think what's cool about the archetype of the Wild Woman is every single woman can relate to her in her own unique way, right? Kind of like La Loba. And I was listening to that again yesterday, and I really loved that, how each bone represents something else, you know?
Absolutely. So I would say that perhaps the wild women have same a few qualities that are also associated to the witch archetype, but I wouldn't say they are the same. You
Okay.
know, for example, the witch archetype, now it's coming Halloween, it's probably going to be around.
Right.
So the witch archetype is a woman who tends to be a little bit exiled actually from the village, from the world that a wild woman lives. The witch archetype tends to be an archetype as well that is this has a lot of authority. It is a little bit older as well. It's more related to the hag. It's very mature, has a lot of wisdom. We say like when we see the story of Vasalisa, which you might have seen, is we
Yes.
want to enter Baba Yaga's house. We want to serve her. We want to learn from her, but we need to be careful not to be trapped and stay forever in Baba Yaga's house because we don't want to become Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga doesn't
Right.
have, perhaps the things that we want to build in our outer world.
Right.
So
Like
we
the
can
life,
learn,
right?
yes, the outer life,
Yes.
relationships, children. There's many things that we want to develop in the outer world, so we need to be careful not to be trapped in her house. But yes, I
Right.
do see the wild woman archetype as this prisma with several facets. And like all
Okay, cool.
archetypes, always evolving, always growing, always changing. So that's why the stories they come in the Women Who Run with the Wolves, they also come slowly. No, Bluebeard is shedding naivety. It is almost like the wild woman learning that. And then later
Right.
on, you have other initiations.
Yeah. Would you say that the Wild Woman like is somebody that is always mature or starts out, or does she grow to be mature, or can she start out being kind of born a wild woman? What would you say?
I wouldn't call someone, I think, like that a wild woman, especially if you were talking in relation to the archetype. The
Right.
archetype is something very grandiose. Every archetype, it is very grandiose. So to think we need to become the archetype is to put a huge expectation that it will never be met because the archetype
Yeah.
is out there. It is something, let's say, in a different, more simple example, the archetype of the good mother. I'm a
Mhm.
mother. If I put myself and believe that I will become this archetype or want to become this archetype, I will set myself for frustration because the
Right.
archetype is a body of energy and ideas that it's impossible for me to attain. But what I can do is I can come into relationship to it. I can learn
Mhm.
from it. I can apply it in different ways. I can try to cultivate some of the qualities of that archetype within me, but never become the archetype. To become,
Right.
it's also not just setting us up for frustration, but it actually imprisons us. Because the archetype
Mhm.
of the wild woman, it is not the archetype of something else. So it wouldn't allow you
Right.
to have the flexibility and dance between the many facets of a woman, an
Right.
individual woman.
Right. Okay. That I feel like that makes a lot of sense. Right. We don't want to be stuck in, because that's kind of the opposite of what the wild woman represents anyway. She's not really stuck in one box, right? So or the archetype isn't stuck in one box because like we said she has a lot of different facets um and things. So uh what just I would love to kind of dive deeper into maybe some of the stories that we discussed on the Wolves Tribe because they really touched me in such a way. Um, maybe we could start with La Loba and just the I love the symbolism of the bones and how each one represents something different within us. I really related to that, how one bone for ferocity, one for creativity, or however you put it, is something very powerful. And to sing life back into the bones. I was listening to another podcast the other day called The Wolf Connection, and my friend Sarah was on it, and she had a very interesting take and said that each wolf's howl is like a fingerprint, right? So each one is unique and special, kind of like in the story how the bones are to each of us unique and special. And is each song that La Loba sings over the bones, like, it could that be a unique song for each person like, or each creature she brings back to life?
Absolutely. I love that idea. And yes, and
Yeah.
there's even a moment in the story where she arranges the bones, right, in the skeleton form in front of her. There's this feeling of she's taking her time there in placing each bone. She has a fire by her side. And she takes her a time to think of the song, and then she begins singing. So
Yeah.
I love this thing that is not just it's unique to the woman, the song, but it's unique to the bones. So one
Mm,
woman can also have multiple songs, can have multiple ways of bringing their soul, the bones, into life, bringing their soul into a state of being awakened.
yeah. And like, I feel like it's almost like when the when La Loba sings the creature back to life, it's like the everything is content, right? Like when wolves go for a hunt and they get a kill, they're content and full and happy. So it kind of reaches this antithesis of like, oh, La Loba is content and happy with how the bones are arranged and how they came out, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, please go
Um
ahead.
yeah, and I feel like that also really relates to another story that you talk about, which is the sealskin soul skin, which I think was uh it's hard to pick a favorite, but that one's definitely up there for me. Similar to almost like a soul song, but I love the idea, and maybe you can go into it a little bit more about the animal skins and what that could represent for us today.
Isn't that a beautiful symbol? I love that too. And
Yeah.
we see it in many, many stories. Women from indigenous tales to Celtic tales, different mythologies around the world, folk tales, they all have some sort of animal who transforms herself into animal through some sort of woman who transforms herself into animal through through dressing herself in her animal skin, in her animal pelt. And here we talk about the dual nature of women. No, we have the time of the land in which a woman is in her human form, and then the pelt, the skin, the fur that symbolizes the wild side of this woman. And the wild side, it doesn't mean out of control side, but it means
Right.
one that is connected to the soul, to the deeper self of this woman, one that has the keys and the answers for the question of what do you desire, one that has a sense of longing. It wants also belonging to place. It's one that wants to be truly seen. That is the wild. It does not need to
Right.
look a certain way. It does not need to fit any certain box. Sometimes we believe the wild needs to be in the woods. But the truth is, we have incredible women connected to the archetype of the wild woman living in urban city centers, and
Right.
just traveling through life. So here, when we have the pelt, I think it's all the stories actually that show this motive, this pattern. Um, they remind a woman of her dual nature, and they remind a woman that the pelt needs to be protected. We need to keep it close. We cannot exhale. We cannot give it to someone else. We cannot pretend it exists. We cannot sell it off because the
Right.
myths also show what will happen if we do. No, there is
Yeah, a cautionary tale usually, right? Like that's what a lot of stories are trying to tell us is, you know, be cautionary of that, to be giving away our whole selves, right? We have to have balance in our lives, and right, that's the antithesis of the peak of the story, is that the balance is off. Everything was great for a little while, and then the balance was not there anymore. So,
exactly.
and I kind of love that, especially because I have a son. So, you know, being a mom is obviously very important. And I think reading or listening to the story was so beautiful because the son kind of comes in and gives her pelt back. And I think building what I did with my business, actually, I wouldn't have been able to do it without my son. There was something about having him and like coming to fruition and being like, oh, I can like go through with things. I can follow through with things. Um, and I really saw the symbolism of that in sealskin, sealskin, soul skin. So, um, it's such a
Yeah.
powerful story.
And I see how, just like for you, for me too, motherhood is a threshold, to remember the importance of our soul skin, to remember the
Yes.
importance of our pelt and the cycles replenishing ourselves. Have you done
Right.
my creative life workshop, Myths in the Creative Life?
I have not, but that's definitely on my list. So, tell me a little bit about it, though. I'd love to hear more.
Well, just to mention, well, it's a workshop designed to ignite a woman's creative life, and we weave in together three stories. I tell three stories at certain moments of the workshop, and we are there interpreting the symbols, harnessing all of that to understand how a woman should protect her creative life. How can she nurture? How can she find the cycles of rest as well? And the first story there is Fox Woman, which is an amazing story as well about a pelt, a woman who has a pelt, the pelt of a fox. And in the tale is not a cautionary tale, is a tale that shows exactly what we should do. How we protect our pelt. The nose we need to give in the world to also protect our pelt. It's a very interesting, beautiful story about sovereignty.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait to get into that more. That sounds amazing. I feel like it's an important point to also mention that, like you said, the wild woman, like something, the pelt can represent so many different things for so many different women, right? Like I think sometimes, like you said, people get caught up in that the wild woman does have to, like, there is something magical about her running through the forest, right? But I mean, it could be somebody, like you said, in the city who's maybe like dressed to the nines, but she maybe finds her power in a boardroom, like, maybe just finding herself and staying strong in her belief in what she's doing at work, or many other different examples, though, of what the wild woman is. She could be a soft flower, right? Like she could be represented by something soft. That's where she could find her power, maybe in, going outside, gardening, something like that. Um, what would you say that would you say that the wild woman is like the mature woman, that she kind of moves past her naivety, or do you think that there's room for that in the wild woman archetype? Because it seems like a lot of times she learns through her stories, or there's, a lot of times a cautionary tale. I know not always, but what would you say?
I think the archetype is not naive. I think shedding naivety is one of the great initiations of the archetype.
Right.
And we as women in the real world, we might have, at a certain age, we might have already lived through certain experiences that allowed us to really, from hands on knowledge, shed naivety to a certain degree, a certain level.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
as soon as a new experience in life, a new kind of event occurs, we might still see that there are remnants of our naivety there. So perhaps one shed their naivety in their personal relationships, in romantic relationships when it comes to that. But then in their workplace, they still suffer from some naivety, some childish hope instead of a
Sure.
woman's clarity. So I think
Mm.
it's a very long initiation. The things are not in myth. We see that very clearly. One initiation is done, it's done completely, and it's behind us. But it keeps
Right.
repeating itself like a spiral, and there's this depth to it. So you just kind of you go deeper and deeper and deeper. You shed more layers of it.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite symbols is the spiral, right? Like we just keep going back and looking at lessons, but now we've added on our lived experiences to keep looking back at what we've already been through. It's like such a beautiful symbol of just what we can do in our own lives.
Yeah.
Um and it also uh kind of leads me into the story of Bluebeard, right? That's one of the first stories that we talk about, or that you talked about in the Wolves tribe. And that's a story that's focused on shedding naivety, right? And focusing on the instinct within us as women, and how important that is, right?
Yes, I actually love the Bluebeard story because I feel it encompasses so much. So many of us at some point trade our freedom for a promise, of what we call the golden cage in myth.
Mhm.
And myth here is showing us that a golden cage is still a cage. We need to see that. The girl in the story of Bluebeard, throughout this tale, she will discover that. And she will see, and the way we interpret that story as well, is that sometimes the cages, sometimes the predator is in the outer world, but very often the predator is within us. It is a voice that imprison us. It imprison us feeling we're thinking that we are not worth it, that we are not capable, that we need certain things to move on or to do certain things in the world. So those voices are the Bluebeard as well that we are kind of dismantling. And the shedding of naivety comes in to believe that everything inside of us, that all the thoughts that we have are good and are well, is that naivety. To believe that through our love, through the goodness of one, we can change things in the world is also naive. So here's some of the lessons the girl is learning there. And of course, we put it in parallel. We do that mythic mirroring and we see it in our lives.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story. It makes sense why it's kind of towards the beginning of the book, right? Because it really kind of sets up for some of the other stories, because I feel like it has a lot of layers, like you said, right? You learn a lot of different things, even though it's not like the biggest tale, right? Like I feel like you learn a lot in what's layered in that story. What would you say that for the wild woman archetype, like if someone were reading a story, what would be some of like the symbols, I guess, that would represent her? How would we pick her up in story?
You mean the wild woman archetype?
Yeah, the wild woman archetype, yes.
So, for example, with the story of Bluebeard, we don't actually see her, right? We
Right,
know this is an archetype I'm sorry, this is a story that is part of the archetype's journey rather than seeing exactly her there. We see
right.
maybe a glimpse of the archetype in the older sisters, which are they keep themselves, more conscious throughout the tale. They are more wise. Um, they become the eyes later on in the tale, so they are the ones that can see the predator for what it is and also see who's coming to help. But we don't actually see Wild Woman. There's another glimpse there when the young girl, the wife, says, "Oh, give me some time to prepare for my death." It shows that she knows what to do.
She's learning.
She's
Yeah.
learning. There's a moment there that a wild woman comes out. But you see again, she is not the archetype. but she gets into connection with it for a second. Just
Right.
like the sisters when they come to visit and they say, let's play a game and open all the doors. There's a moment of connection, curiosity, great quality for the wild woman archetype. So they get into connection. What I would say, rather than trying to find one character, one symbol that showcases the wild woman archetype in stories, is ask yourself, what is the wild woman archetype learning through this story?
I like that lens of looking at that. And it makes sense that it's that she's not just one figurehead, is that it's looking through the lens of how can we see glimpses of her in ourselves through story. Hi, Wild Ones. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. This episode is brought to you by my clothing brand Femme Sauvage, and I'm going to link that in the description below, along with a little discount code for you. Be sure to check it out. We also try to donate $5 with each of our animal designs towards specific charities. I will also have those in the description below. And enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks so much for listening. What would you say, going deeper or kind of going back to some of the animal skin stories? I saw one of your posts the other day as well. So um, they're kind of all like a lot of these stories with the animal skins are, or would you say they're shapeshifters, or
Yeah,
would you consider them, yeah, right, and also dual nature and
yes.
representing and so you have the Selkie, the fox woman, brave, and then the wolf skin. Is the wolf skin La Loba, or is that a different story?
You the wolf skin, you mean the wolf's eyelash?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's, I don't know where. Yes, the wolf's eyelash. That was the last
Okay.
story that we went over in the wolf's tribe, right?
Yes. That's the one, the last story of the wolf's tribe, but that's not a shapeshifter. But the other stories you mentioned, yes, we have there a woman in this dual nature. There are some other stories that we can also discuss that goes into this idea of women transforming into animal, women showing a wild side. Sometimes this wild side enraged, sometimes this wild side in a state of freedom, sometimes in a state of deep passion or rest. There are stories like the sealskin, soulskin. The woman needs to enter her pelt to be able to fully rest, to be able to fully restore. No, and there are other stories as well that she needs to enter her pelt, the kind of dress in her pelt, to bring her full power, her full rage, and be able to protect, her babies or her land. So the
Right.
wild nature itself, the pelt, it gives us access to things that we cannot access in our human world only. And
Yeah.
it's an invitation for us to reflect on how can I connect with these aspects of myself, this wild aspect of myself. Each woman will have their own way of connecting to their soul. There are as many ways as there are women in this world. For some women might be swimming in the ocean. For others, walking at the beach. Another can be just reading a book. It can be making love. It can be being with friends. There are so many ways that we enter into connection with our soul world. And even events in our outer world can drive us there.
Yeah. I feel like I definitely almost got called to do this, I think, from, like I said, being a mother, kind of circled me back into looking into Women Who Run with the Wolves, the book, and to just come back to my creative life, I think is so important to recharge, like you're saying, ourselves and be able to give back, because once we're full and content, kind of like my point before, then we're happy to overflow, like, let me give to you, right? So it's very important, especially for us moms, you know, giving, I'm sure, you know, busy every day. You have two little ones, right? So hands are full.
Yeah. It's
But
lovely to
it's
hear
very
you say
important.
that, Brianna,
Yeah.
that this
Yeah.
work reconnected you and kind of drove you into your creative life, because it's also what I've experienced and what I hope actually women through these stories we work in the course, the Wolf Tribe or other courses, um, uh, that this is what they gain. You know, it's this
Yeah.
encouragement and make it conscious for them that that I think dedicating ourselves to our creative life is medicine.
Yeah.
And it's the medicine that women need because it is through it that we build a strong sense of self, that we generate things both from for our soul and for our outer world. It helps restore, it helps renew. It what connects us with each other. So I think it's very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. I just really love also that her calling to all of us, right? Like she is, I think that's specifically why I'm always very drawn to this archetype and her stories is that it is very invigorating, and I think it calls to like you said, it's every single woman can relate to the wild woman because in us there is a dual nature. There's always that connection, and I think that the epitome of the wild woman like basically just the connection back to our true selves, right? And sometimes the more society gets in the way and you know makes that murky, we need to connect to her more, but connecting to her is really just connecting to our inner selves and what we find passionate, because what one woman finds passionate another woman may not be interested in, but that's her soul fulfillment. And I think each person, each woman has their place in the world to be able to, you know, bring their loves and joys and passions and creative life into society and blend in. But I think that's how we heal as well. So,
Yes, absolutely. And not just one. There are as many ways as there are women in this world, and each woman has many ways. So that's
right.
also
Yeah.
interesting to know and remember. You know, what works maybe today won't work tomorrow, and we need another way. We need to be very vibrant and dynamic in finding ways to connect with our soul.
Right, because we as women, right, we also can relate very well to the seasons, to the moon. So within different seasons in our lives, what connects us back to ourselves is going to look different, right?
Mm.
So yeah. Um, Also, just in a more broad, general sense for mythology, what are some of, because I saw a very beautiful post about breastfeeding and the symbolism of the blood on one of your posts recently. What would you say, like in mythology, what are some of the strongest symbols of the woman, or what are you know? So
It's hard to answer this question in a very straightforward way because I think it depends. It depends
right,
of the phase of the woman. Women actually are, well, we're such special beings. You know, we go through so many phases in our life. When we leave that girl phase and enter adolescence, we're entering the maiden. And then that kind of young adult as well, still in the maiden, transforming. Then we enter into the mother. Mother here, not necessarily mother of biological children, but the sense
right,
of the archetype of the mother, mothering oneself, taking care of the world as well, taking care of the other,
right.
to then later on enter the archetype of the queen and finally the crone. So a woman, she goes through many initiations marked many times by breastfeeding, by the blood, by holding blood, menopause, by bleeding, by beginning her blood cycles. So it's hard to say that one symbol. Okay. A few
Right, right,
symbols connected to the feminine. And here, the feminine I talk about as an archetypal energy rather than
right,
male and female. So there is feminine archetypal energy within men as well. Um, So with the feminine, I would say ocean, moon are some examples. The forest, everything connected to nature tends to be very feminine, tends to be an indication of a feminine initiation. As I said before, the blood as well. There's this
Yeah.
blood can be a symbol of violence, like in relation to the masculine, but women,
Right.
they have the ability to bleed without violence. We experience blood without violence, and blood is a symbol of life, death, life, of creation, of death as well. And there's
Right.
something about us having, during a large part of our life, the insights of blood. While
Mhm.
men, to come into contact with blood, they need to engage in battle. They need to engage in some form of violence, of sacrifice as well, of the natural world, to experience blood. So there are different insights to gain, not to say that it's bad or it's negative, but there are
Right.
different insights to be gained through that experience. Um, a few more symbols, if you that you ask. Well, any symbol of birth and mother, of course, as well, connected to the
Right.
feminine. Um, what else?
I really liked the cave also being a symbol of the womb, and but also how we can use that as a representation to go deeper within ourselves, to find almost, which I also really like, is that the wild woman is very connected to her feminine side but also to her masculine side as well, right? That dual nature could also be represented in the pelt, right? Like the in one way could the pelt be representative of the masculine energy, and then almost dressing up could be the feminine energy, right? So it's really uh dual ass, a lot of dual nature there as well.
Of course, there is not just one way, right, to analyze a tale. And
Right.
in my private mythical sessions, in which I sit only with one person to analyze a story rather than a group, we analyze it in the best way possible for that person rather than um, a general way. So we could see
Right.
that. And also adding to what you said about the masculine and wild woman, definitely the archetype is very much connected and holds many qualities, and it has developed the archetypal masculine within for two main reasons.
Right.
The wild woman archetype, and even I think all of the stories that Clarissa Pinkola Estes brings in her book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, are an encouragement for women to develop her life. Developing one's life, it is an act that comes from the deep feminine, but it requires a healthy masculine to be created in the world. Women who
Right.
do not have a healthy masculine archetypal energy will become either slaves of doing and never be able to
Mhm.
actually listen and fulfill their feminine desire, or, on the other hand, or slaves of doing because they do too much, their masculine is overdeveloped and became a tyrant, or they are underdeveloped, their masculine, and it's a woman who has many passions, many dreams, many desires stemming from that wild feminine nature, but is unable to manifest it in the world because she's unable to organize it in the world, to place the boundaries, to collect the tools, to build something for herself.
Right.
So again, the masculine is extremely important for
Yeah.
women, and I would say even in Women Who Run with the Wolves, it's definitely very well kind of weaved in and worked there.
Yeah. The ultimate dynamic, right? Symbol of dual nature and having the masculine and feminine energy, and just the ultimate symbol of balance, right? Like that's what she really represents, is to make sure we have balance in whatever season or change in our life that we have as well. Um just kind of maybe like a more fun question, because I love animals so much. A lot of my drawings focus on animals, but what would be your favorite if there is a favorite, because I'm sure it's very hard for you to pick, or one of your favorite animal tales.
Okay, I would say that I don't have a favorite, and as a
Yeah,
mythologist,
start that off.
it changes from time to time, okay? Just like when you talked about the breastfeeding post,
Yeah,
the idea even of looking at breastfeeding as a symbol only came up for me because I am still breastfeeding.
right,
And so mythology is really about that. It's making the stories and the symbols come to life. So we follow what's alive for us at the moment.
right.
So I don't have a favorite animal. I believe when actually I was deep in my studies of women who run with the wolves, the wolf appeared a lot. And then I also had something with the fox a while back when I was in England. Now, for me, there's one story particularly that I am so passionate about, and I tell it all the time, which has a frog. So I would say a
I love
frog
that.
right now. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that. And I feel like it's funny because I feel like for me that definitely changes as well, like what stories I guess I'm gravitating towards or what animals I'm gravitating towards. I feel like the souls of animals sometimes if I'm out in public and I see them pop up here and there, they're very quick, but I think the symbolism behind seeing them is like a great reminder. Like somebody will have a bumper sticker on the back of their car of an elephant or one animal that I really love that I saw this summer actually was the hummingbird, and I saw it hanging off of somebody's car windshield or whatever, and it I did another kind of live listening meditation a couple of months ago, and it was about focusing on the hummingbird and how the hummingbird travels to a different world and is a great messenger between worlds. And even a year ago, it's very hard to see hummingbirds, at least by me. And it was late in the season, and I remember seeing this hummingbird, and it stopped and looked at my husband and I in the backyard, and then it took off. And I was like, wow, that was definitely meant for me to see that. And it was such a blessing and a really nice reminder that we can pick up these things from nature and animals. Animals is where I relate to nature the most. But I know some people can do that with plants, you know, um, different different seasons or forests or oceans or you know. Um, but what would you say about just to add to that, like about animals and seeing animals, and I guess maybe like relating to them back to story and how they're so dynamic, also, kind of like the wild woman, right? How we can view animals, and the coyote in one story is usually like the trickster, right? So, how animals kind of shape themselves into their own archetypes when we're reading them from stories. So, what would you say? I guess my question is, would you say that animals kind of do that in story, or that they kind of shape themselves?
Well, animals, they will have different meaning according to different mythologies. In
Yeah,
comparative mythology, we see that very much. Sometimes an animal that can appear in a story, let's say in South America, as a good omen, as a good sign, in China or in Eastern cultures, it can be a messenger of death, right? So it really depends on the place. Of course, you will find similarities as well. That's the whole work, is to compare and contrast and find
right,
there. But the most, because at the end of the day, it's a study. The most interesting thing is to have a mythopoetic view of life and the world. So if you walk around your house and your garden and your street with this mythopoetic view of life, then a bird lands and moves itself in a certain way, and it gives you a message. And it's more about trusting the message that you believe the bird gave you, that you felt it in your bones, in your
right.
soul, the feeling it evoked, rather than going on, honestly, that's what I feel, going on an encyclopedia and thinking, is this a messenger of good things or bad things? Or whatever
Right.
characteristics we're looking for. But it's
Yeah.
mythopoetics is really about putting you in the center and
Right.
having the world there in connection, being in communion with the world. Suddenly, nothing is an accident. Nothing is a coincidence. Everything has a purpose and a meaning. And
Right.
it can be fed, of course. So, for example, I carry some ideas around certain animals, no, because of my work and how they appear in
Sure.
stories. So when they do appear in my life, immediately the feelings that I have are associated with that. But I would trust, nevertheless, my deep intuitive voice and what the message is giving there, the symbol that is appearing for me.
Right. I love that because I also feel like that's so relative to how we view stories, right? Is our own interpretation of them and how we can relate back to the lessons in the story as well. I agree with you on the sense that I think it's more important for what you take away and how you feel when you see an animal or you see a symbol, how you relate to that. Because right, don't they say like there's no better teacher than the teacher of yourself, right? So um uh yeah, so I agree. I think that uh not looking in an encyclopedia and doing the deep work and relating back to what's going on inside of yourself, that's what that's what that symbol is supposed to do for us, right? um
I love
and
the research. I think it feeds a lot, but we shouldn't rely on that.
Yeah. I also like the idea of the symbols of the animal should be obvious, right? Like a whale is great in communication because they have a beautiful whale song, right? So it's kind of something that's obvious within who they are as beings, and then how we see that in ourselves or how we can relate to that as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that instead of just being looking at one way, is adding more. No, so the more you discover, let's say, about the biological behavior of a whale, the more you can symbolically connect to one's life. At the same
Right.
time, if you study some stories in which the whale appear, you will add that information in. So you have Jonas and the whale, which is a very famous story about
Right.
entering the whale. And that entering of the whale is entering the womb, is a descent. It's going to the depths there and re-emerging in a new way. So the whale also would seem, at least if I saw one, like,
Right.
just like that, I would see it as that, as an invitation perhaps to descent, an invitation to take something to the depths.
Right. Yeah. And especially because, and in another way, they're deep divers, right, in the ocean. So they're diving deep all the time, and to be able to represent the depth in us, and then also the depth within stories and how we can relate back to them. um and also just like how dynamic that is, right? Like it's in the Jonas and the whale story, that's relating to the whale in a way that's an action. He's swallowing Jonas and his, right. So it depends on the action of the animal, right? Because a wolf looking at you is one thing, a wolf chasing you is another thing, running with a wolf is a different thing, or seeing one just pass by is like another thing. So yes. um what just and kind of changing topics a little bit, what would you are there any books or anything that you would recommend for somebody that wanted to dive deeper into this topic, maybe besides the obvious Wild Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinilca Estes? What other books would you say are great to dive deep, maybe not even just in the Wild Woman, but maybe also just in general mythology and in general.
I think Sharon Blackie's work is really good.
Yeah.
For someone who is intermediate, I think as a beginner, someone might struggle a little bit to connect, but someone who has already some insights into myth would really enjoy that. It's very, very beautiful, her work, and she has a body of work that is very consistent as well. So you wouldn't need to just read one book, you could go into her many books. I think that's something. If someone who is more initiated and want a kind of a very deep dive, I would say read Marie-Louise von Franz. A lot of Pinkola Esté's work also stems from that, comes from that. So kind of a deeper dive, way a little bit more in the past, I would say. Older
Yeah.
publications. The Feminine and Fairy Tale stands out with that. Well, Martin Shaw, my teacher, has incredible books on that, on mythology as well. I would definitely recommend those. What else? Someone, Maria Tatar, very good. She has one book specifically on the story of Snow White that is very interesting. Lisa Marciano, very good with a book on motherhood and a book on the vital spark, came out this year. I actually did a talk with her about it. And it's all about the vital energies that a woman should nurture to be able to access all her power, her full power. So it's very interesting. I think these are already plenty, no, of recommendations.
Yeah, that's good. I'll definitely when I publish this, I'll make sure to have a little section somewhere to link all these great recommendations for all of us. Definitely on my to read book list. So thank you so much for all of those recommendations. And then just towards the end of this, because we're almost wrapping up here, but I just wanted you to go into some of the things that you offer and like some of your courses, because you really do such amazing work, and it was very important for me to do it at the time that I did the Wolves Tribe. It was so great for me to be able to listen and connect to story while I was doing housework, and I needed that connection back to the creative life. So I wanted to one thank you for that, and how we can kind of give back and you know what you do. So go ahead and
Thank you so much, Rana. So I have many courses, and I'm so glad you've done the Wolf Tribes and you had a good experience with it. You know that it
yeah,
gained, that it gave you some insights, some tools, some inspiration, some resources. Hopefully, a good foundation as well around myths and stories. Um,
absolutely, yeah,
Similar to the Wolf's Tribe, I have other courses on demand, so you can just purchase and begin and do it at your own pace and time. Courses like The Heroine's Journey, that is very much about balancing the masculine and the feminine within. Every course is also based on stories and myths. Myths in the Creative Life, that's a shorter workshop. Reclaiming Eve, also a shorter workshop working with the story of Adam and Eve, the creation myth. Um, I have a mentorship, so women who are interested in developing and offering the work of that's present in Women Who Run with the Wolves. They want to bring in either through a class or they want to embed in an offering they already have. They want to design workshops or women's circles. They want to add to their therapeutical setting or astrological offerings.
that's so cool.
I love this work. I love working one on one. So I support
Yeah,
women in doing that and gaining a deeper knowledge, feeling confident to deliver this. And then I also have private mythological sessions in which we sit together one on one and discuss a myth. We can share, the person can share their personal lives if they want, and I'll tell them a story that is related to it, and we can, together weave some threads there. It can also be someone who is just interested in learning more about myth, and I will use that time to teach them what I know. So I would invite actually someone to explore my website. There's the podcast, there's the book. So come
yeah.
see the world. of women in mythology and join us whenever you're ready. Timing is everything, as you said.
Yes. I think that for people listening, your podcast is great because it's just these little snippets of the story, or well, it's the full story, but it's bite size. I feel like people can listen to them throughout the day, and it's a really great way to connect back or just re-listen if you need to, because I found that that was really powerful too. It was nice that, oh, this is only like a little 13-minute thing, but it's like a great in between for me to like reconnect and really sit and think about the story. So I would highly recommend to check out your podcast. It's very connecting and awesome, and I think the work that you do is really special and unique, and there's not I haven't seen that many like that, just doing the myths and specifically. So I think that what you're doing is so wonderful, and the impact that you're having is really great, and I so appreciate the time that you set today to talk to me and to share more about the wild woman and woman in myth. And I hope to do this again as well, because I think that an hour is hard with all this depth, but I think we did a good job today. So,
Thank you so much, Brianna. It's been a pleasure. I am so happy to first connect with you one on one. And
yes,
I'm honored to share the conversation. I'm so, so happy to hear that the work and the course impacted your life. That's always my intention when I offer it. So thank
yeah,
you. Thank you so much for all of it. Thank you.
yes. Thank you so much.
Because there's nothing that I need to fear anymore. Yeah. Inside of every brother in